hey, can you guys give me a quote? You know, how many insurance companies you work with? Give me a quote, give me a quote. So I called this girl that I knew, and she owns real estate agents. So she had one of the people there call me, and I asked her, how many insurance companies you guys work? Oh, we only work with Allstate. I said, forget it. Allstate's gonna be out of whack. She said, have you quoted with Allstate before? I said, yeah. I have quoted lately, and I said, no. She goes, she started taking my information. All of a sudden, she comes up with a price. And it was like,
an excellent price.
no?
Excellent price.
Well, compared to what I'm getting from him, I got $2,300 for 6 months policy.
Really? That's
He just got in
a lot.
Well, he's just 17 years old with an accident, so I can't complain about it. Yeah.
They public transportation.
But here's the kicker. I had him on my policy, and he was driving the cost of all of our cars. So what I did is I got my 2 cars, my car and my wife's car, out of my policy. I closed my
I was
policy.
gonna ask you
I
about
got these two cars on my commercial
the
policy.
presentation. Sorry.
And then I was trying to find another
I
policy.
got a
just for
case
that
here,
car. Okay.
but I have to try for you to see if it's 42%.
I can get a pen and paper. You got one?
So basically,
How you doing?
Hang in there. How you doing that test?
See?
Terrible.
I think it's
How many did you get right?
I hope he did.
I got a 30%, so.
I hope he used that test for the purpose that he said he used it.
Okay.
Yeah, I
And this is
definitely
the
was.
property that's being sold. So we went ahead and then we saw there was a little chart what we need for acquisition center.
But then like the first
So we went
two,
ahead and then we
the first 3
can
questions,
buy a
I
portion.
mean,
Just to
it's
get
subjective.
into this
It's
work.
like I told him.
Do you have to
Can't
do
argue.
any
You know, all
zoning
day. No, we're not gonna
or
argue.
amendments to a site plan?
Yeah, it's very subjective.
So
Then one
basically,
question
right
said,
now,
what's the
we
best
have to
type of,
replot it
what's the
and
best
then,
type of lease?
but,
Triple
it
net,
gets a
yeah,
little
okay, I work in the
complicated
business, triple net is
because-
good, but everybody I know that has
Well,
a
maybe it's
triple net
coming,
lease.
if
and
all
you
you're
get a
gonna
ground lease,
do
like,
is a
That's
replat,
the best.
that's not really
Right,
a
you get a
big
10%
public
of
hearing
85
Oh,
ground
really?
lease. Oh, yeah.
And I really want you to spend some
Triple net,
time
that's,
on a comprehensive
ground
plan
lease
or an
is the
amendment
tenant's
or a
business
site
property,
plan.
and they have order
If you're really gonna
All we have
have,
is the link.
is there a public hearing required
It's
for
not
this?
as common.
Just
Most
for
people
a
don't do it.
replat?
So
No,
triple net is
because
the
it
best that
gets
most
a little
people
bit more
know.
complicated,
But like,
so.
so it's like
there's also
subjective,
some
so-
engineering portion that has to be done
And then the
because
steps,
now,
like, you know, what order
they
we
want
do
us
this
to
in,
do
so-
a new,
Um,
I did therapy.
who do you work for?
the only
I'm
one.
doing it.
Who do you work for?
I'm a commercial real estate broker.
With who?
Company's called Equity.
Okay.
I haven't gone through the case.
No, you can do that as long as it's complicated.
February
Because the
13th.
more complicated, the better. I want you to touch all this stuff.
Coastal
So I
is
want
gonna be
I'm
doing
gonna do
a,
the research because I just.
an hour
Good.
lunch
And then I-
presentation.
And then I said, look,
Before Linda?
the case that-
Yeah, the downtown Florida.
Essentially, about
Good.
how do you
And the
score
guy
stuff?
said,
Prospect.
Miami Gardens.
Yeah,
Good.
They're right
I'm
across the
gonna
street
send
from my
you
office. I'm
some,
over
like,
there.
very
all the
nice
time.
stuff.
You can if you want, or I think you can do that. I'll be more than happy to take a look
I
at
use,
it. Okay,
I'm
you have my
really
email?
friends with most of the guys in Coastal. Me and Daryl know each other well.
Oh, really?
That's why I kept saying my name the whole time. As a student, can you go to that CoStar workshop?
Yeah, I signed up for it.
Yeah, you should go.
It's just an hour and lunch we will serve. So,
Can't beat that.
can't beat that. CoStar is the, yeah.
There was this an event.
We'll get a responsible drawing. He said, last time, you know, provide feedback as far as that we move in the right direction, integrating my forward, integrating my memos. He said he's gonna grade everybody's memos and, write his comments next class.
He asked that question last week. He said the same thing last week.
Okay, let me get started. You can continue to eat as I talk, because it's 7:46.
Yeah, that's the weekend, yeah.
While we were on break, I got an email. I always get these emails. No, it's a good thing. Certain cities and counties I care about, I'm on an automatic notice for their agendas. So Broward County, City of Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, if they meet twice a month,
Not Pompano?
not Pompano. So I get that, and you want to see what's going on if you have a client interest. So if you're active in a town, even if your one project's not going forward, like you just came up and spoke to me about Mommy Gardens, well, you might want to monitor everything going on, because there might be another property trying to do a rezoning, the neighbors come out and scream, and they set, things on fire, say no, then you're thinking you're in this little box doing everything great, you're gonna be there in 4 months, so you wanna know what's going on in your town. So,
Professor, quick question, with respect to this paper that we have to present, this property, because I'd like to start working on this thing.
yeah, I would like you to start working on it too.
Are we the ones gonna pick the deal, or are you gonna determine what's gonna happen?
No, okay, the syllabus is self-explanatory, I think. However, there could be variations on it. The most important thing is that you touch as many of these land use regulations as possible. The ideal thing would be a piece of property that went through a comprehensive plan amendment, a rezoning, a site plan approval, neighborhood oppositions, litigation, lawsuit, Bert Harris, it went through it all. And then you could just do what's known as, quote, review of the literature. That's what academics do. They just review the bill's work. You report on it. So you could say, look, I'm not yet ready to play miniature Donald Trump Jr. I'm not going to develop anything, but I know how to go look at someone else's project. And I'm going to report back what's done, and I'm going to learn from that, and we as a class can learn from that. If you happen to be in your professional career doing a deal, and now you want to use that deal, and you're going to actually learn from that, and you can dig into, hey, we got this piece of property. I think this could really be good if we change it to the highest and best use of this. But it's going to require the following stuff. This is what I would do. And that's good. Okay? It's something that you touch and feel, this stuff. But at the very least, you have to do something with zone and something with the site plan.
I understand, but if we don't have that particular property, how are we gonna find one that has all the pieces of the puzzle?
Well, you got to dig a little bit. You can make a phone call to a local government, or you could just say to yourself, okay, I've lived in a certain area for a while. All of a sudden, there's this major redevelopment just happened. And I remember before that, there were these big yellow signs that said, public hearing on this property, call.
Okay.
You do it that way. Or, you have to realize something. I sent you all the stuff on the Carillion PUD. I didn't see the property. I happened to know about it. I happened to then do a Google search, and I knew that there would be city records available. So you could find something from that point. You could take Wynwood in Miami. We know that everything's new there, right? We know there's major stuff being done. You could do that.
You can look at where they're building this new train from Overtown to Orlando. Anywhere on that whole line, anything that they've torn down and redone, or they're trying to take a building and make it something else, or somebody bought up something and they're, there's got tape around it now. They probably all went through all kinds of zoning stuff.
Since you live in Boca, are you familiar with the golf course around the Camino Real area?
Yeah. They've been trying to do that for a while. There's been litigation.
That's a good one.
People try to convert golf courses over. A lot of times there's covenants on the one that you have. I did the one in Williams Island, had out by California Road, owned by Pro Stadium. But a lot of that also gets down to a combination of just pure real estate. What does the restrictive covenant say? We said that last week. Look, and this gets a little bit Pompano, since some of us want to talk about Pompano. I think I said
the first day of class, and I think on the handout that I gave you, I only want you to do one thing, and that's to pay a lot of taxes because you're making so much money, okay? Well, you don't even care how much tax you pay because you're making so much money. So it's about making money. And there's three things that you need to line up perfect. Remember when you were maybe in junior high, you did a science fair of all the planets, they would circle around. The goal was to line them up.
Yeah.
Your pro forma, your market study, and your land use analysis need to work up. If you continue this program, and you do the Argus stuff, and you do good Excel spreadsheets, and you know basic real estate finance, you can build a pro forma. And you can understand how the monies work.
Sure.
You take a class of market studies. You can start to do some demographics and test things. But most good developers, I'm teaching another class where I'm using a book called How Real Estate Developers Think. And it confirmed what I've been saying for 20 years. I do market studies, I don't put any value into them. I go by my gut. Because if your gut doesn't feel good, I don't care what the market study says. Because MAI, made as instructed, many times appraisers will tell you what they want, what you want to hear.
How do you like the book?
What's that?
How do you like the book?
I love that book. George Perez is quoted in it. He was one of the people. It's a great book because instead of having a textbook to learn real estate, it's kind of like someone wrote a story by interviewing all these developers, and you learn real estate as well.
What's the name of it? How developers think?
How real estate developers think. My last name is Brown. I think the guy's last name is Brown. Now, what I'm trying to get to, the whole purpose of this project is for you to touch and feel, not the market study, not the pro forma, the real estate stuff. I mean, the land use stuff. So the more stuff you touch, the better it is.
Yeah, I understand. I was just trying to figure out how we're going to pick the particular project or
Anything you want.
anything you
Now,
want.
I taught this last semester, or last year, 13 students. That was never an issue. People did what they wanted. A lot of them it was, I found this vacant piece of property. I think this would be cool. Or other people said, hey, they're building in Palm Beach this big tower on the water, west side Intracoastal. This is what they had to go through to get it. And they were able to get minutes of the public hearing. They were able to get the staff report. They were able to see the process that had to happen. I just need you to get pickled in this stuff. Now let's pick on Pompano for a moment. I might be completely wrong, and maybe someday I owe an apology to the Pompano Beach Innovation District. But just because you do a form-based code, and just because you have someone take your money as a consultant to draw all these little pictures on the box, and again, as a planner, this is pictures on a box that get done in all 50 states. Just plug right in. This is nothing unique. This doesn't mean the market's going to happen. I don't know if the market supports this. I don't know. I don't know if the performance supports this. So this is almost like we've put all the land use investigation on training wheels. We're saying here, development community, come develop. Well, your pro forma better work, your market better work. Okay? So this becomes the issue. I sent you, before I sent you this, something else on Pompano. If you remember, there's two, I want to make sure I get this correct. There might be one CRA, but two CRA districts, or there might be two separate CRAs. But in both cases, it might actually be the city commission serving on both. I know for a fact in Fort Lauderdale, the Fort Lauderdale City Commission starts their conference agenda meeting at 1:30. Then at 2:30, they stop that meeting, they put on their CRA hat, and they talk about the CRA for an hour. Then they take off their CRA hat, and they go back to being the City Commission. Delray Beach has a CRA, but they have a whole different CRA board. So this becomes the question. I don't know if I have the skill set, or I don't know if I have the personal gut check that the last week of class we should meet here and play with this part of Pompano. I can tell you from my point of view, the other CRA that's by the beach in the Intracoastal that has towers, has water views, and I've bidden on that stuff and I've actually built that. And I think there's a plug and play market today for that. Maybe we spend time on that. But if the group says no, I think this is really more of what we're going to be exposed to than condo towers. You don't really need a course here for that. We can decide. But I think it's better to spend the last class out in the field, trying to touch something, have an aha moment discussing. But given the fact that it's not full summer with complete daylight, we have about a half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. The question is, this is more challenging. I think it's harder. Do we want to play in this area, or do we want to go play closer to the beach, where you pick up on the tourist redevelopment, and at the end of the day, waterfront property does sell. We don't need to decide that today, but that's where we're going with Pompano. I want to go back to the California case for a moment, because you said something, and I'm not sure if it's fully correct or not, because I don't know. The last page of this case, this is what most Supreme Courts say. Again, it went to the Circuit Court, which is the trial court, then the Court of Appeals, now it's the California Supreme Court. So the California Supreme Court says the judgment of the Court of Appeals is reversed. And now we're going to remand, that's the key legal word, remand the matter back to the court for further proceedings consistent with this opinion. So what that really means, I think in theory, they're given an opportunity, in theory, for Lennar to say, okay, I'm going to reduce my development to 41%, not the 31 or the 29. And for this region, by doing some other technical, not legal arguments, but technical scientific arguments, we can show that a 41% reduction of mine is equivalent for the region of 29%. The court has opened the door for them to come back in with that argument. Okay? I don't know if they're doing it, I don't know what's going on. But they remand it back down. Now, I won't know exactly, where they go, but courts just have that habit of trying to just kick it back down. But this is the sad thing from a planning point of view. I want to make sure I give you the right facts, because this is important. To be developed over 20 years, 1,200 acres, 20,000 dwelling units, 58,000 residents, with other uses, parks, golf course, schools, community facilities. In general, the government gets a better deal when one big developer does one big plan. Because then the government can say, okay, we want a linear park through the whole thing for the community. We want a regional park here. We want these buffers. We want the school. We want all this public realm good stuff. And then you'll get these development rights. And then hopefully there's a developer's agreement. Just because they said no to the 600-pound gorilla doesn't mean you're not going to have now 600 one-pound little monkeys coming along doing one-off developments who might be below some threshold because they're not at 20,000 units. They're coming in for 200 units at a time. And you don't get the public realm, you don't get the berm, you don't get all the benefits. So part of the problem is government saying no to the big developer is actually not good for the community. Because when the big developer comes, like Wynwood, redeveloping all of Midtown Miami, just saying we're going to rip it down and start over. Good. Now you can do the community benefits agreement. What's in it for the community? As opposed to if all you did was redevelop one little building at a time, You don't get the synergy. So I think that's where they're short-sighted, but it's also California. Okay, let me pick on the woman that Donald Trump fired, who happened to be the acting attorney general for a few moments. And then after he did his Friday executive order, and a couple of federal judges appointed by Obama overturned part of it on Saturday, she on Monday came out and said, we're no longer going to defend the order. And put aside for a moment your politics, because my comment is not a political one, it's a legal one. There's something called the four corners. Here's the executive order. Here are the four corners of it. Actually, let me do this right. Here are the four corners. The executive order says A through Z. Okay? A lot of what she was saying was the following. I don't think this executive order is constitutional completely. Because a lot of what came out was the following. I heard President Trump on the campaign trail say, I want a Muslim ban. I heard Rudy Giuliani, who's his consultant, say, I want a Muslim ban. And I think, even though this doesn't say Muslim ban, and even though the 7 countries he picked were majority Muslim, and actually Obama previously put them on the list, and there's actually 40 other Muslim majority countries that were not on the list, so 40 of them weren't on the list, 7 were. I think she gave a political decision, because she took stuff out here on what was said on the campaign, saying, well, I think this is really Muslim ban, and we don't have religious tests, therefore I can not really enforce it anymore. Okay? She then came in, I mean, she then got fired because Trump said, you're out of here, because you're not going to do it. But aside the politics, judges are supposed to look at the four corners. They're not supposed to say, well, I think you have hatred in your heart and discrimination on the mind. Okay? Therefore, I'm going to overturn your decision. Well, that might be the case, but we live in the world of law. So when the California court decides that 31% is not good enough when the statute only requires 29%, because we think this other stuff out here, well, that's judicial legislation. That's not following the law. So the big debate right now, and everyone who wants to be Supreme Court judge will always say the right thing. It gets down to this. This new Supreme Court, gentleman, Gorsuch, I think, his attitude is, I am going to look at every matter before me based on its legal merits going back to the Constitution as a standard. And I'm not going to blow life like into a balloon and say the Constitution is ever expanding, a living document, to now fit the new modern age. Because if you do that, you don't really have a Constitution anymore. You don't have a foundation. You don't have the four corners. Being a lawyer, being a judge, is not the sexy, fun stuff. We're all going to watch football on Sunday, right? That's what we have to do as Americans. We have to watch football. Okay? You can have many people involved. The people on the field playing are Congress. The people in the referee zebra suits are the judges. They judge the game. If you want to be a player, bulk up, put on a jersey, go play the game. You know, we all have a role to play. Unfortunately, judges become more and more political, on both sides of the fence. So I'm not just picking on the left. But what you need to understand is no longer in California is 31% greater than 29%. Because the judge said so. Judges will do what they want. And you never know if you're going to get a judge who's a strict constructionist and say, on the four corners you win. Okay? Now, if I had a bag of white stuff, right? We all know what probably that white stuff is. And the cops see me, it's on film, they're filming me with a bag of white stuff. And they're about to arrest me. But I quickly digest it. Okay? They can't arrest me. Saying, well, we knew what you ate was a controlled substance. Therefore, we're going to act like we still have the controlled substance. No. And we're not about, we still have Fourth Amendment. We don't cut people open to take the drugs out. Right?
Thanks, Lex.
Yeah. So my point is, no matter how much you know that I don't deserve mercy and grace, and the book should be thrown at me, you, the government, have to have the stuff. You don't have it. Habeas corpus. You know what that means? Habeas corpus. Okay, let's assume I'm being charged for murder. First thing I'm going to say is habeas corpus. Show me the body. Who did I murder? Well, we can't find her. But we think you were having relations outside the marital bed, and we can't find her. So we're going to say that you murdered her. Well, show me the body. Maybe so-and-so is on a trip. No, she would never, her mother said she would never go on a trip. And I'm going to keep saying, show me the body. Okay? The law is not this creative thing. Developers have vision. Lawyers and judges got to stay in the four corners. But the lesson for you, sometimes 31% is not greater than 29% because judges go off the reservation. That's why it's important to try to settle. Okay. Let's hit the book for a little while. Chapter 7, page 62. And as a point of review from last week, I think we did the Euclid case here on page 47. This is where, this is again another reason why I used the planner book. If you look at the Euclid decision and you go to a planner at a local government to try to get a project approved and said, hey, I read the Euclid case, my teacher said it was the foundation, the Bible of zoning. Guess what? I followed the case to a T. Will you approve my project? Their gut response would probably be, we'd rather not. Euclid, the foundation of zoning, was let's separate the uses. Residential, single family here, multifamily here, apartments there, office, retail, industrial, separate uses. And for a long time, that was zoning, separate uses, because they're incompatible. If you go see a planner today at a local government, they would rather have you come with a mixed-use project. They want diversity. They want diversity of people, they want diversity of uses. They want shared parking, so you're not building more parking than needed. If you've been to Meisner Park in Boca Raton, if you've been to City Place in West Palm, and other places like it, mixed-use projects where you can live, work, play, eat, shop, go to the movies, all in one self-contained, that's what they want. And they want it connected to other things, and they want it to be all-inclusive. So yeah, they might approve your Euclid-based separated zoning, because the code says they have to. But you want a positive staff report, you want kudos, you want them to really push it through. Learn what planners want. if you work for a company, this is something I've learned when I used to run a public company. The easiest thing to do in the world is spend other people's money. It's the easiest thing to do. And if you have a corporate expense account and you can go to conferences, you may not need to go to the American Planning Association, but you should all be going to ULI conferences. And ULI is basically a bunch of real estate developers that understand the importance of working with the planning community to build better communities, not just scorched earth mentality. At the other extreme, I think the American Planning Association doesn't really like developers. So for me to become AICP certified by the American Planning Association, I had to take my 25-year history and put more of the planning spin on it than the development spin. ULI should be a comfort zone. So even though you might be going to your commercial brokerage this or industrial this or all the technical real estate ones, every once in a while hit a ULI one to learn to talk, to learn about mixed-use mixed-use communities, compact development, public-private partnerships. There's a lot of them, and you should be a member. And if the company's going to pay the $500 a year for your membership, you should. You should get the newsletter. But you got to learn their talk because they got to write the approval. Okay, let's just run through some cases real quick in Chapter 7, just to give you a framework. Again, the case name doesn't matter. On the first case on page 64, the second line, all I want you to know here is the word zoning overlay district. And you remember on purpose I try to trip you up on the Boca Raton car dealership? Well, don't trip yourself up here. Zoning overlay district is as follows. Every property has a base zoning. Okay? The base zoning might be B1, might be R4, whatever the base zoning is. An overlay district is like a cloud above that. That's another level of zoning. Sometimes it could be an historical preservation overlay district that says, yes, all the hotels on Collins Avenue in Miami Beach are zoned what they are, but they're also in this historic overlay district which says there's more protections. You got to go through 2 hurdles. There might also be an environmental overlay district. It says, yeah, you get your base zoning subject to we put this additional layer of environmental protection. That's when it's negative. Sometimes it's positive. Sometimes it's like a regional activity center where it's overlay, where if you're in this downtown regional activity center, guess what? We remove the height limitation. Or we let you only provide half the parking. Okay, it's an overlay. So if someone says to you, hey, what's the zoning? And you say it's B4, make sure there's no overlay. Because there's 2 of them there. That's why if you were here last week and I posted online the PRZ report or PZR report, they may not catch an overlay district. They're just going to do the map thing. Okay? The next case at the top of page 65. Line 4, you see the word moratorium. I don't know if I used this analogy yet in class, but in November, the state of Florida has approved medical marijuana. Have any of you been to CVS or Walgreens where you use the drive up? Where you drive right up and you get your prescription?
Yeah.
Imagine driving right up now and saying, can I get 3 Tide Buds, a little bit of Panama Red, and some of that Sensimilia, and then obviously I need the stuff that's grown inside of California because that's the strongest. And you know, it's supersized in all places.
Those are just wild guesses.
Just from experience many years ago.
Okay, Bill.
So what they've done, every town's scared. So they passed moratorium. Say, stop. Wait a minute. If you allow Walgreens with the drive-through given a drug, why can't Pete's Pot Palace have the same thing on B3? We, as the city of Boca Raton, have just put a moratorium in effect for 6 months. We're going to study the issue. That's what they're doing. And now they're going to go back and they're going to say, all pot medical marijuana distributions are going to be treated more or less. They're not going to say this, but they're going to do. Just like they put adult entertainment in certain areas, they're going to limit this. Because they don't want. Now, I'm going back to Vancouver next month. I walk down the street, there's Starbucks. Right next to it is a big store with a big pot leaf on it. You walk in, you get what you want. That culture has accepted it. I think parts of Colorado have accepted it. Government has the right to say, stop, we're going to fix it. They don't have the right to take away your rights to it, but they have the right to put the brakes on to study it, and that's what's doing here. In the case at the bottom, what I wrote in my thing, and what you need to know is the last word on page 65, the word special exception. The word special exception is also a conditional use. 25 years ago, it was usually as of right or a special exception. They've moved to the word now more conditional use. And I've given you the example in class of 6-story apartment building, the exact structure, 6-story hotel. Apartment building is allowed as of right. Hotel, same exact structure, same architect. Conditional use because of the parking and the transient use and the commercial components of it. And if you meet the conditions, you're allowed to do it. But here, they denied the special exception permit for a gun club because it wasn't compatible with the neighborhood use. Everything's compatible. Now, I think I've used this analogy, and there's always an exception. In general, someone on the basketball team should not be going out with someone on the gymnastics team. One's 6'8", one's 4'2". I mean, they can. I mean, love's blind, right? But in general, you would say, not compatible. You know, the uses. So it's kind of like sending and zoning. We want like things to be together to make a neighborhood. And what we want are things in a transition. So in general, if I said to you, go design me a good community, you know what you're going to do? You'll start with single-family homes on this block, then some duplexes, then some 3-story walk-ups, then maybe a 5-story apartment, then maybe 12-story apartment, and then the commercial, and then the highway, and then industrial. There's a reason how it goes, and that we go with the transition. Okay? The Rogers case versus Terrytown, nice part of New York. Floating zone for increased density multifamily is okay. And if you see on the top of page 67 where it says discussion, you see the word floated zone in quotes. I want you to know what that is. An example I always do is called landfills. You're planning for the entire Miami-Dade County. You know that eventually you're going to need 1 or 2 more landfills. Just common sense. You don't know where they're going to go yet. So when you have the list and the legend of the big zoning map of all the different uses, A1, B1, C1, you put this little floating thing that says, let's call it RF for landfill. But it's not shown on the map. It floats everywhere, but you have to now go ask for it to land on your property. And it's really a conditional use that's yet to find a home, but you lay it out there. And it's usually for the locally unwanted land uses. Okay? You're probably not going to deal with one, but I just want you to know the term floating use. Okay, the next case, very simple premise I took from this. Again, I don't agree with all the cases they put in here, but they did. I wrote, local government has great powers in approving or not approving a rezoning. But what I want you to see on this one is under the discussion. Go down 4 lines. The test for spot zoning is whether the rezoning is not part of the community's comprehensive plan. Let's pick in Miami-Dade County. Let's assume you're the president of the Latin Home Builders Association. Very powerful person. And let's assume you got all the friends up there on the city commission. And you got a piece of property in a single-family community, but you're the head of the Latin Home Builders Association. You know everyone. If you get those elected officials to change the zone from single-family to multifamily because of who you are, and you're the proverbial hole in the donut, that's spot zoning. Because the comprehensive plan that I spoke about on day 1, the big 40,000-foot Bible, you're not consistent with it. So the point of it is, don't use your political power to be the only person in the neighborhood who gets to do 3 times as much. It's spot zoning or contract zoning. It probably won't be upheld because the plan matters. Okay, I like the Cheney case on 68. Can you see the 2nd and 3rd line, plan unit development PUD? Remember I was talking before about a PUD, unless you have higher density, if you cluster and you get something back? Whenever you do a project, doesn't need to be a golf course community 1,000 acres. I'm working with the city of Fort Lauderdale right now on a PUD innovative development. The criteria is 2 acres, but you can ask for it to even be less. The neighbors didn't like that because we were trying to not allow them. But the point of it is, a PUD should be where you throw the book out the window, you say, let's start from scratch. What's the right thing? But, like I just said on the California case, when you ask for something you're not allowed, realize the government, the community is going to be asking for you to give something back. Community's benefit agreement. And sometimes it's a win-win. I've done some great PUDs. I got a lot, the community got a lot. And if I had to follow the code, no one wanted me to do it because it's too sterile. So you should try to be as creative as you can. Now I want you to see this on page 69. It's the 2nd to last paragraph. The paragraph starts with in an effort to combat, but if you count up from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you need to know this without ever memorizing. This needs to become part of your DNA. 4 basic aspects of zoning and regulations. Use. What uses can go there? Dimensions. How high? How wide? What are the setbacks? Density. How much? And then the design standards. Design standards are very common, like I said, in form-based codes. The first 3 are more the standard Boca Raton car dealership code. When you start getting to design a little bit, it could be a form-based code. Or it just could be the following certain little minor things. But these are the 4 things. So today, actually, in my office, someone said to me, hey, I live on the water in Boca Raton, right by the bridge, on the Intercoastal, 2-story building, there's 14 units, 7 on the bottom, 7 on the top, very small. They're only 500 square feet. Do you know anyone who wants to buy it? Who get, it's getting a little bit run down. This is my IT guy. Why my IT guy can afford a $250,000 investment house, I don't know, but good for him. So I taught him something. He knows nothing about land use. I said, okay, let's go to the city of Boca Raton website. We did that. So let's open the zoning map. Open it up. B3. Okay. Oh. No, R3 is residential 3. We open it up, and then I said, okay, now you have to go to the code to find what the code says. And it has a 35-foot height limit. And I said to him, we're not going to get that changed. We'd have to do a rezoning. Your neighbors all over here in the single family don't want a tower. I said, you're stuck there. I said, so your best use is each of you with your $250,000 beat up little thing, find 1 or 2 rich guys that want to buy the whole thing and then make $1.5 million waterfront lots for estate homes. But given the zoning, you can't go up. All you can do is go better within the 35 feet. And he was hoping I was gonna be able to do a deal with him. But you just can't get the height. And I don't think, remember I said last week when we went through that checklist in that book that I gave you, you need to know the disposition of each county, what their temperature is. Remember I said Martin County is completely different than Port St. Lucie. Coral Gables is the word, you know. Boca Raton is not going to allow a tower there when there's no tower, but all there are single-family homes. Don't fight that battle. But this you need to know as the framework. And then just going through the next couple of things, page 70 talks about floating zone and then PUD. But I do want to spend more time on page 71. You need to know backwards and forwards, conditional use, and as of right. If anyone says to you who's a commercial broker, yeah, you're allowed to do it. The first thing out of your mouth should be, am I allowed to do it as of right, or am I allowed to do it as a conditional use? And many brokers might say, I don't know. Some might say, good question. Your response would be, well, go find out. Now, I've worked with CBRE and JLL and all the big ones. And usually what they do, we sit down, we have lunch as we're putting together the authoring memorandum for a big deal. And as a land use lawyer, developer rep, I tell them, because no disrespect to these guys that get paid more than I do. No jab intended there, but brokers, you know, when I used to run a company, I was the president and CEO, my goal was not to be the highest paid employee. I had 425 employees and I had 8 salespeople. I would tell my wife, my goal is to be the 9th highest paid person. Because if my salespeople are rocking it out of the park and getting 7-figure commissions on deals, I know I have a job for the next year. But if they're not doing the best and I'm number one, that means I may not be number one any longer because we're not selling. But that's a different point. My point is, you need to know the difference as of right, and you need to know the difference in conditional use. And if you were here last week, the one thing I said, when you look at the PZR report, and they tell you, yeah, you can do this as of right, but then a town like Fort Lauderdale has something called Neighborhood Compatibility Ordinance. That says, yeah, the zoning code might allow 120 feet, but if everything around the neighborhood is only 80, we don't think it's compatible to let you go to full height. Therefore, we're going to recommend only 80 like your neighbors. And if you sue, you may not get it. So you need to know the full picture. And no disrespect to any commercial broker, they're not land use lawyers. And no disrespect to the 6 of you after you all get A's in this class. You know the issues, and you should start to be able to do an investigation. But at the end of the day, you better be real comfortable with this. Okay, I've checked the zoning. I know the zoning. I know what the uses are as of right or as conditional. I checked for floating zone. I checked for overlay. I checked for neighborhood compatibility. Okay? If you're not sure, call staff or get a land use lawyer, because you don't want to get tripped up.
Maybe call you.
Yeah. I'm cheaper than at Greenberg in Holland. But look at 72. This is called a win-win, either incentive zoning or bonus zoning. Look at the last 3 lines. For example, a community may want to encourage public plazas, and so may allow additional building height where the ground level plaza is of a certain size and open to the community. Community might want affordable housing. Sunny Isles would basically give you 50 stories as of right, and if you paid a bunch of money, you get 55. I think we should shake down. But find out what the community wants. And look at the top of page 72, the first 3 lines. Sometimes you have to provide affordable housing. Sometimes on-site, sometimes you write a check instead, in lieu of. 73, the top 3 lines. You need to know this. At the end of the day, developers are an easy mark. There's always diversity on an elected body. There's always someone who represents the poor side of town, who wants to help his or her constituents. And the easiest thing to do is say, developers, when you do your rich big projects, provide affordable housing. They tried that in Miami-Dade County. And it was going fine until the Latin Builders Association and others called in every market. They said, we're not going to do this. And they allowed this elected official to have some face saving, because what they did, they went from a mandatory, you shall, remember I said earlier, English language shall and may? The elected official from the minority community representing her constituents wanted every other developer to, thou shalt provide affordable housing. And through lobbying and backdoor channels, it went from, you developers may provide affordable housing in exchange for bonuses. Shall and may is a different word.
Are there instances where something would be done on one part of town and then your community kickback, so to say, is done on another part of town?
It happens all the time, especially in Miami-Dade County, through community benefits agreements. When you want something, the community wants something too. And it's kind of like, let's make a deal. And I don't want to call it extortion, but at the end of the day,
That's what it is.
it is. But you know what it is? That's why you run a pro forma. That's why it's a line item. You got to buy drywall. You got to write $1 million check to this foundation. You got to write $1 million check to this, community outreach group. You got to hire these people. I don't want to call them no-show jobs, but when I did work in Fort Lauderdale, there's certain people from the minority community who are on my team. I made them feel important, and they could deliver peace and votes. When I was doing the Broward County Convention Center Hotel with Broward County, we brought in a minority-owned contractor to do the parking garage next to the 1,000-unit hotel we were doing. And they were part of our team, and they were there. And everyone knows how the game's played. But you've got to reach out to the community. And the reality of it is, many minority-owned contractors are nothing more than the wife owns the company. Doesn't do anything but go shopping, but her name's there and they get to use that. So people take advantage on all levels. But you need to know where the fix has to be put in. This is, as Donald would say, this is the swamp and we're probably not going to drain this one. That's just how it is. But don't be the guy in charge of the lighting at the Miami airport taking a $5 million kickback on changing all the lights, because then you go to jail. Be aggressive, but don't ever cross the line. But you just need to know you're going to get hit. At the bottom,
Do it legally.
do it legally. The bottom of the page, we spoke about adoption of a moratorium, interim zoning, it's also called zoning in progress. And that's going on now with the with the marijuana. Okay, next page, 74, you see overlay zoning, we spoke about that. Second line, it talks about, environmentally sensitive areas or downtowns or transit. We spoke earlier about All Aboard Florida could be a good case study. Well, everything around All Aboard Florida, you draw a circle, that's where the government wants you to put a lot more housing. So I don't know for a fact, in fact, I don't think Fort Lauderdale is that good yet, but what they should be doing, in my opinion, a quarter-mile radius around the All Aboard Florida stop in Fort Lauderdale should basically be, in my opinion, go as high as you want. That's the ultimate transit-oriented development. Why have a height limit when there's a train right there? People can live and walk to the train and go wherever. I know there'll be neighbors in Sailboat Bend, the nice area, that are going to yell and scream and others, but the point is it could be an overlay. And then just so you can have your bookmark, you see on 74 at the bottom, second line, form-based codes, and we're going to spend a little bit down on Pompano. Okay, let's move on to Chapter 8, Due Process. If you read the entire litigation I gave you on the Winn-Dixie Orlando, their argument was, you violated my due process because I, as the homeowners, can't cross-examine the developer's architect and land use people. No, you knew about due process. And you know what it is? Let's assume you don't all get A's. let's assume I say to you in the syllabus, there's going to be a final exam on week 8. That's notice. It's going to be at a time certain. Further notice. Okay? It's going to cover everything from weeks 1 through 7. Okay? You have the right to come to the exam. You have the right to take the exam. And you have the right for me to be fair and impartial when I grade the exam and not discriminate against you because you're a Dolphin fan, I'm a Jet fan. That's due process. Notice, opportunity to speak or take it, and me to be fair. Okay? And that's about it. So when it comes to land use, usually it's not a problem. People know the project's coming. The idea that you sneak this in doesn't usually happen. But you want to reach out to your community. You don't want them screaming, I didn't know about it. Because it doesn't make for good neighbors at that point. But due process is a case. Okay, let's talk about the famous case on 78. If you and your partner, man or woman, your choice, want to live together outside the boundaries of marriage, I don't know any local government that says the two of you can't live there. Okay? You're not married, you're not related. I won't judge you for living in sin. But we don't have a, I don't even think Coral Gables has that ordinance that says two unmarried people can't live together. But I bet Coral Gables does have an ordinance very similar to the one like the village of Belterre, because Coral Gables has the University of Miami. They don't want 8 law school students, when I was going to law school there, renting a house in a single family community, because it's not good for the community. And it's not unequal protection, because the again, zoning and planning is all about protecting the single family neighborhood lifestyle first. So you can't you can discriminate against 6 college kids. You get to say, sorry, it's not a family. Now one of the things, real life thing, maybe you've seen the show on TV, the Golden Girls. What happens? Men usually die before women. So what do you do when you got 2 80-year-old women? They're not in a sexual relationship, they're just alone. They're not going to remarry. And it's cheaper to share a house together than have companionship. Well, 2 of them, yeah. A 3rd, well technically you might be in violation. But that's different than 6 college kids. But you just need to know this case out there. But this is where you need to understand the law. And remember, I said to you, the only thing I ever want you to remember is on page 1, the first 2 words, it depends. That's all you need to know. Because 6 unrelated college kids, you can discriminate against them and say no. Flip the page though, page 80. 6 unrelated people with mental retardation, you can't discriminate against because they're protected under a federal statute. Delray Beach, 6 unrelated former cocaine addicts go into a sober house. Okay? 29 days ago, they were in a 28-day program. They just left U of M. They were doing cocaine around the clock. Okay? Then they could not be living in that house because they're basically 6 unrelated college-type people, drug fiends. 29 days later, after leaving the drug rehab, the same people can go to that house, wave the flag, I'm protected, sober house. I have a physically handicap and I'm protected. You can't discriminate against me. So, same facts slightly. One goes this way, one goes the other way. Remember we did the Boomer Cement case and we also did the come into the nuisance of the cattle farm. The cement factory that gave the bad smoke on the neighbors was allowed to stay, but they had to pay the neighbors. The other case we did right after it, the cattle farm was there forever, but development was going towards it. They made the cattle farm leave, but the developer had to pay the cattle farm. One went one way, one went the other way. Facts matter, but you also need to realize whenever you're dealing with suspect classes, discrimination, religion, race, or national origin, there's different rules involved. Just want you to know these two cases because you got to be very, very careful. And all of you need to know the following three initials, or you'll get sued. And I've been sued numerous times for this. Ready? ADA. If you're going to build something, it needs to be ADA compliant. And you're buying something used, you better make it ADA compliant. There's people that go around with their typical plaintiff that they just wheel from place to place to say, okay, my guy couldn't get into your Hilton, I'm now going to sue you, we'll take a $500,000 payment. Gee, aren't you the same guy who sued me on the Hilton over there? Yeah, I am. But that's what we do. Professional plaintiff.
That's what we do.
How much of that money can actually they get?
Well, the lawyer takes a third.
But I know, meaning, because you talk, but let's see, the guy comes to you and they say that.
It usually settles and you have insurance and what have you. It's a tough thing, but my point of it is, part of your checklist, if you're buying something, should always be, is it ADA compliant?
I thought that the law didn't obligate you to upgrade to ADA compliant if the cost or the burden would be too great.
Okay, let me see a question. Let me interrupt you right there. I didn't go to Harvard. I don't know what inordinate burden too far or too great is. But when you're Hilton and you're at Blackstone Group and you get sued, you write the check.
It's hard to argue that, you know, that much money.
Yeah, so I mean, the point of it is, my job here in 8 weeks to help you spot issues.
Right.
Your architect should be doing this for you. That's their job. Okay, that's something, but I want to go to page 83, 84, and 85. Do you see substantive due process at the bottom of 83? Go down 3 lines of that paragraph in quotes. The land use controls, that's the rules, must advance legitimate government interests to serve the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Then you go to the next paragraph, second line, we spoke of this before, high deferential in favor of local government. If the government can pass the straight-face smell test, it's substantial. Substantive due process is met. Wait, I just paid $200,000 for the Porsche 911 turbo convertible. What do you mean I can only do 65 miles an hour on the turnpike? The car can do 220. No, there's a rule that stops you from doing that. That meets standards, right? No one's going to argue that. And unless you're in Coral Gables, what do you mean I can't paint my house a different shade of pale white? You know, what's your interest, Boca Raton, to say I can't repaint my house? You know, there has to be some reason for government to mess with you. Okay. Procedural due process, up at the top, you see the 1, 2, and 3 in line 3. You need to have notice of the hearing, you have to be able to be at the hearing, and they must make finding on the facts there. Fairness. And it gets down to the finding there in criminal thing. And this is a good analogy. I don't know if I used this in class or not before. Let's assume many years ago I had a drug problem. And I got arrested as a teenager for pot. Now it's 30 years later, and I get arrested. But they can't find the bag because I ate it again. They can't say, look, you gotta find him guilty of having the substance in 2017, because in 1976, when he went to Madison Square Garden to see Led Zeppelin, he got arrested for Nickelback. And clearly, someone who got arrested in 1976 with a nickel bag in New York at a concert is the kind of person who would have had it here. Well, I should be found guilty in these facts, not what I used to do. So you can't bring it in. Now, just to finish the discussion, the only way you can bring in my prior offenses in a courtroom is if I say the following on the stand, or my lawyer says the following. I'm an altar boy. I've done nothing wrong my entire life. I'm Mother Teresa reincarnated. I'm perfect. The minute I say I'm great and bring my character in, they can bring prior bad acts to impeach me. That's why you don't take a stand against yourself. But we don't judge you today on other stuff. You have to be finding the facts before you. Fairness. And it carries through. Equal protection. And it goes into fundamental rights in the second paragraph, then second tier, and then the next page goes to third tier. All you need to know is the following. Don't discriminate against anyone. Make reasonable accommodations. And if you have any concerns, really talk to a lawyer. You need to know something, that rights are being greater and greater given to all groups of people. Our Constitution was written by white, wealthy men. But our Constitution was written to protect everyone else. Our Constitution is not to protect the majority mob. It's to protect the innocent minority. That's the foundation. So what you need to know is, both from a moral point of view but legal point of view, treat everyone fairly, especially housing, employment, okay? Because they have the right. Now what I used to do, because what I used to hate was when women would come work for me, and I love women working for me, but I hate when they leave to go have babies. And I used to get yelled at by my HR director. And what I used to do, you shouldn't do. So I'm telling you what not to do to be cute, not to try to say, hey, I'm a creepy guy, but just to tell you what you shouldn't do, because I wasn't following the law. I would say things like, my kids love basketball. Do your kids like basketball or soccer? I can't ask that question. No, that's, hey, I would say to my HR person, no, I'm getting to know them. No, shut your mouth. You can't ask that question. What do you mean I can't say if your kids like soccer or basketball? I'm hoping we can carpool together. No, you're not. You try to see if she has kids, or if she's going to leave you and go have kids in the future. Can't open the door up. You know? Just like I said to you, if I'm the lawyer and you're my developer client and I take you to go see the first city commissioner, now I take at 1 o'clock, now at 2 o'clock I take you to see the second city commissioner, and she says to you, how are you doing? You can't say, I'm doing great. We just met with your colleague. He fully supports my project. You just violated the Sunshine Law because you brought information from one person to the other. So these little nuances of the law, it's important. So the best thing is to try to learn it. Don't be cute going around it. And if you're going to be cute going around it, you better make sure you've made a business decision to be cute.
When you get to that point, when you have gone through those situations, what are the basic introductions that you have seen developers to do when they meet for the first time commissioners? Do they just...
Okay, what I usually do,
Yeah.
I spent 8 years working for the Blackstone Group that everyone knew was the billionaires out of New York, private equity, that were not here long term. So what I had to do was I had to say, but I'm here. I'm their representative. I started at Greenberg, Charlotte. I've lived here all my life. I'm not flying away. Here's my cell. If you want them, because they're gonna assume you're gonna fly in, make your money, and leave with people not fully paid, projects not complete. They're gonna assume the worst of you. So the first thing to do is just be nice, be civil. Try to show your commitment, okay? I think that's important. Let them know you have some ties. But you gotta be careful. Everyone in Broward County hates everyone in Miami-Dade County. And everyone in Palm Beach County hates everyone in Broward County. Because we think it's, ooh, bad down there, it's crowded. We live in West Boca Raton, which is also now known as unincorporated Palm Beach County. It makes 1,000% legal common sense to bring University Drive from Broward County into Palm Beach County, to bring right over the canal, right through Parkland to Boca Raton. It's been on the map for 25 years as good planning for the region. Helen Keller would say you should do that. It has not happened and will not happen. Because the people in Greater Boca Raton don't want those people from Broward coming up here. I say this, you don't want to be going to meet with the Fort Lauderdale City Commission and talk about all the great things you do in Miami-Dade County. Because their first reaction is, ooh, it's Miami-Dade County. And they're not thinking racial different issues, they're just thinking too much density. We don't want that. So you have to be very sensitive to what their needs are. Okay? Now hopefully you're a good local land use lawyer who's helped you on that. But clearly what you don't do is you don't highlight the fact, hey, you realize my wife and I and my kids all gave you the $500 campaign contributions. They know that. They know who's writing the checks. They got people who let them know that. I would just say be yourself. And what I've also learned, I learned this from Debbie Rashevsky at Greenberg Traurig, my first boss. If you're an elected official, I need to tell you all the benefits of my project. I also need to educate you on what the other side's going to say against it, so you have all the facts. So I say, Commissioner, I got to be honest with you. Some of the community members are not in support. I try to work with them. I think some of their concerns are not legitimate, but we're trying to work with them. I just want you to know it's not everyone on board. Or, hey, it's that one condo building a mile from the beach that thinks nothing should ever be built between them and the beach because they can see the, you know what I mean? Oh yeah, they're crazy. So you want to educate as well. But it's a balance. But I would say never lie, never mislead the truth. Okay, let's knock through chapter 9 and 10 real quick. This is important stuff though. Everything we're going to do in 9 and 10 is the lawsuit thing. And then after this, we're doing the book next week. Okay, chapter 89, up at the top, third line, the Fifth Amendment. Government can't take your property without paying for it. That's the Fifth Amendment. Page 91 is the City of Escondido case. There are a lot of fine nuances in the law, okay? You can't scream every government regulation is a taking of your due process rights under the Fifth Amendment. The Yee, if I'm saying it right, City of Escondido case, and if you go to the discussion, line 2 and 3, the ordinance was a mere regulation of the use of the property, but not the taking of the property. Government is allowed to do rent control, put caps on it. New York City has rent control units all over the place. So this person here said, government, you're taking my property by putting a rent control on it. The court said no. The city rent control ordinance did not result in a physical taking, and it was not, quote, too much of a regulatory taking. It was a rent control. It's just like basic zoning. What do you mean I can't do a 100-story tower in my single-family home subdivision? You're taking my property? No. It's a mere regulation of the use of the property. So it's a nuance, and you have to understand, just because government's not letting you become a billionaire doesn't mean they're taking your property. They have the right to regulate. Public health, safety, welfare, morals, house wins. So the case here is you need to know, is it a take-in or just a regulation? And sometimes it's a fine line.
Why would they have rent control?
Oh, because they want to help people who can't afford.
Yeah. My grandparents
So is
lived
it-
in an apartment in Brooklyn
Yeah.
for like 25 years, and she was paying like $400 a month. The guy that owned the building couldn't wait for them to get out of there. 'Cause they
And-
can't raise the rents.
And I love your grandmother, but you know what? If I was her grandson, if she passed away, I'd stick her in the freezer in the kitchen, and I would never let anyone know that she died,
Yeah.
because then I would use it. That's what happened. It's just social engineering.
It's ridiculous.
It's an answer, government answer to low income
Yeah.
housing.
So it doesn't apply to condos, $5,000-$10,000 a month rentals?
Well, no, what happens in New York City now, the big thing is this, it's the 421A tax abatement, where Governor Cuomo, who wants to be the next president in 2020, is doing the following. He wants to pay his buddies at the union top wages. So he's saying to the developers, you build a 100-unit luxury tower. Put 30 units, very small units, charge below market rent for people who need affordable housing. Then for the next 35 years, that other 70 market units of people paying $10,000 a month rent to you, you don't need to pay any New York City property tax. Benefit to the developer, 30% of the tenants have a place to live. Now, the mayor of New York is fighting the governor because the mayor's saying, well, don't make it 35 years, only make it 20 because eventually we need the cash. Now, what happens, and this is why I hate liberals in the New York Times, developers do a good thing, every good deed goes punished. So the developer does this tower. He does what's known as the poor door. He has the 70 rich people come in off Park Avenue with the doorman in the lobby and the glass ceiling. He has the other people come off 58th Street on the side in a poor door, and they can't use the health club or the spa and what have you. Well, I don't think we should treat people substantially different, but some people are paying for those amenities or other. But other people are saying how bad that developer is making the poor door. That's what he calls, what the New York Times called it. So every good deed's going to go punished. Government's going to reach in the developer's pocket. You got to put into your pro forma a line item: drywall, concrete, neighborhood shakedown, rent control. Let's move on. Page 93, right in the middle. You see the paragraph that starts with partitioners emphasize that. Right above that, 2 lines up. Ready? If the regulation goes too far. 1922, Pennsylvania coal. That was the standard. No disrespect to the lady in the room, but there's a famous Supreme Court case that says the following. Supreme Court said the following: I cannot define pornography, but I know it when I see it. And that was the standard that we used on whether it's pornographic or art. From 1922 until like the 1985, the Supreme Court was silent on the taken issue. It was government can do what they want, but they can't go too far. Next case. Let's go to the Loretto case, because you need to know this. Do you remember when I took your cell phone? That was the Loretto case. This was government saying to an apartment developer owner, you must allow the cable company to put their box and wire on the roof. Little box, little wire, all the way to the US Supreme Court. It's a taken. You've taken that spot. Government's action has taken that land. Because I can't then, as a developer, use that place with a line and boxes. This case is important not for the facts, because I think only $1 damages were paid, but it's important to set the standard of the extremes. When government takes the cell phone, they're going to write the check. What I like to do is let's skip over just the way I would teach this class. I go to page 116. Chapter 9 was called where there's a possession taken. Government has done a protestatory taking, they've taken your land.
You're talking about Lucas?
I will be in a moment. I went back to the page 89, what the title is of chapter 9. Government has taken possession of your land. That's what chapter 9 is about. That's why the Loretto case of the cable on the roof is a possession taken by government. Everyone get that? You've taken the land. When I teach this normally, I don't break it up this way. I like to have Loretto and then Lucas right next to it. The Lucas case is a regulatory taking. We haven't taken anything, we just passed a rule. You can keep your cell phone, just can't turn it on. That's Lucas. At the end of the day, they have the same impact. Government has basically taken your land. One, they physically occupied it, you can't use it. The other one, they've taken away all rights except the fact you can own it, pay tax on it, and look at the stars from it. That's why I like to teach Loretto and Lucas as the two extremes. Okay? Everyone get that?
Does this fall under the inordinate burden?
No. This is under lawsuits. Taken.
No, I'm saying, but would this be an example?
No,
because it's kind of.
No.
No.
Let's not do that. I'll tell you why. Let's look at Loretto and Lucas as the two extremes when it's not an inordinate burden. It's you've basically 100% taken it, either through possession or through regulation. The next case I want to talk about is Penn Central, which is the balancing test, which is equivalent to the Burt Harris, and that's what we're going to go to. So what I like, if you had little stickies and you had to look at 3 cases, it would be page 95, Loretto, on one extreme. It would be page 116, Lucas, on the other extreme. And then go to page 111, because this is in the middle. This is Penn Central. This is the balancing test. Okay? And you go down to 111 where it says discussion. The Supreme Court has set up a 3-pronged test, and they balance it. And then you look up the section above that where it's called held, and you see the 3-part test right there. The second line. It says, determining whether a government action is constituted a taken depends on 1, an assessment of the economic impact of the regulation on the property. 2, the owner's distinct investment-backed expectation. And 3, the character of the government action. Now, I didn't go to Harvard. I'm not that smart. That's a 3-part test, but you know what it sounds like to me? I think I've gone too far. Okay? It's a balancing thing. So when I teach this class, and I write my textbook someday, I'm going to write it where you fold open, and you're going to see Loretto here, Lucas here, and then everything else is a Penn Central balancing test. And chances are, since all of you are smart enough to know a Loretto, physically taken, and all of you are smart enough to know a Lucas, 100% government is regulated it, you can't do anything. We don't need to litigate those anymore, because it's so obvious. So usually, we won't have another Lucas and Loretto, because it's like, why? It's like trying to say, we're going to outlaw abortion. We can't. Roe v. Wade. We've already decided that. You can't do it. Okay? Right now, those are the two extremes. So everything else becomes this thing in the middle called Penn Central. Okay? Balancing tests. And those are the things that they balance there. And it's difficult to figure out what it is. But what I want you to see on page 112, counting up from the bottom, do you see the last paragraph that starts with secondly appellants? On 112, see the word secondly and then count up line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, where it has the word taken in quotes. Taken jurisprudence does not divide a single parcel into discrete segments and attempt to determine whether the rights of that segment have been taken or not. Now let me explain to you the Penn Central case. I might have spoken about this before. This is Grand Central Station in New York City. Beautiful building. Beautiful architecture. 6 stories tall. Beautiful. Every piece of property around it is a 50-story tower. This property is zoned for a 50-story tower. They want to build a 50-story tower. Let me give you an analogy. It's almost on point. It would almost be like Donald Trump put in a 50-story luxury condo tower above the White House. Physically, you could do it from an engineering point of view. You could. They actually wanted to do that. They wanted to build something where you'd put down the poles, and then you would build a building that would go up like this. So I have a train station. Okay? Government said, no, we're going to do this thing called historic preservation. That's too special. You can't do it. They sue. And they think they're going to win. They think they're just like the guys in California. 31% is greater than 29%, we're going to win. They lost. They said, wait a minute. We have the right to do this. You're taking this property from me. Court said, look, we're not going to look at each little parcel and say they're taking that. Okay? No. Overall, you have your economic investment expectations. You bought the land for a train station. You still got a train station. No one's taking it. Historic preservation is part of the community public health, safety, welfare. You can't do it. And guess what? You can do something called transfer development rights, move it elsewhere. They lost. I hate this case. But you need to always know the backdrop of it. Just like we're never going to know the Winn-Dixie in Orlando, what's going on for the settlement. Jackie Onassis, who used to be Jackie Kennedy, the president's wife, was on the Historic Preservation Board. She didn't want this. She's Jackie Kennedy. Very famous person back then. Also, if you know where Madison Square Garden is today, there used to be another beautiful building where they let the developers knock it down. And they weren't going to let them do it again. Judges put their pants on like everyone else, and sometimes, you know what they do? I'm not going to let this happen, and I'm going to find a legal way to say no to you. We don't want another tower above Grand Central Station. So we're going to make up this 3-part balancing test.
What used to be where Madison Square Gardens is now.
It used to be another beautiful train station. So they knocked down this beautiful one, they put the garden, and they still have a train thing, Penn Station, but it's no architectural beauty anymore.
Right.
It's like a box. So it would be like Miami blowing up the Biltmore Hotel, or Boca Raton blowing up the Boca Resort, or Donald Trump putting a tower over the White House. Certain things you just don't do. Because we do want to preserve things. Like, just like I can't knock down every hotel on South Beach because of historic preservation. So you always need to know the backdrop. So, I don't think I spelled it right. It's in the book. Loretto here. Lucas here. And in the middle is Penn Central, which is a balancing test. And all you need to know is everything I said to you week 1 and 2. If government takes it, they're writing a check. If government regulates it to a point you can't even use it, they're writing a check. We all said, turn your phone off on a plane. No, you're probably not going to win that one. This is a substantial government interest. Compelling, right? We want planes to not crash. How about this? Out of respect for President Trump, we will never use our cell phone on his birthday. Can you justify that as a substantial government interest that no one can use their phone on President Trump's birthday out of respect to the gentleman? I can't, and I voted for the guy, right? So there's no government compelling reason for that. That probably would not meet the balancing test. And really it gets down to, when you talk about the investment-backed expectations and the government character, it just gets down to, do you want to be here? Or do you want to get to a settlement? Now to go to your thing about the Burt Harris Act, inordinate burden, that's more, is Burt right here. And if you can't win a knockout punch, look, I'm sorry, these are the knockout punches, right? In fact, quite frankly, this is like you go to the boxing match, you look at your opponent here and here, and you just wave the white flag before you get in the ring, right? You say, I'm not going to fight this one, okay? Government's going to lose because they've gone too far. Penn Central can be a knockout punch if you can prove there's a take and it's tough. But what the Republicans did in Tallahassee in Florida, if you can't get the knockout punch with this 3-part balancing test, we're going to create another way for you to try to help you developers called inordinate burden. And it's a little bit like you win, not with a knockout, but you win based on going the full 15 rounds and you get it drawn your way, if that makes any sense. My point to you at this level class for business is you just have to say to yourself, has government gone too far? And if you were here last week when we spoke about the Kunz case, making the guy do something off-site that far away, which is too far. That's why there's land use lawyers. But the key thing I want you to know, it's kind of like staying your ground, don't let government walk over you, but we want to build buildings, right? We want to operate buildings. We want to sell buildings, make money. This is what it's all about. It's not litigation. Everyone get this as a concept? What I need you to do is get the feel. There's no in-class exam where you have to memorize this stuff like, oh my God, he's making us do law school. No. Just you to understand the concept. Okay? I want to go to another case, going back to page 98, because this is important. I wouldn't put it in this part of the book, but they did. the Keogh decision, and this is important, you need to know this in Florida. Pfizer, the drug company, wanted to do a major mixed-use project in New London, Connecticut, okay? There was going to be a lot of office space, a lot of research space, some restaurants, and maybe some mixed use, but mostly it's for Pfizer. And let's assume all of you are homes in New London, and you haven't really taken care of your house. You're all slobs. But right over here is Mrs. Keogh. She's more of a saint than your grandmother. She's perfect. With her little pink house, it was actually pink, with a little white picket fence. And even though all of you are derelicts, or what do we do, deplorables, here's her little thing.